Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Sierra Vista City Council August 10 work session. Today, I want to start by saying a couple things. First, we don't have the benefit of the screens and the normal things we would use for presentations because that's a victim of the power strike we took a little last week. And that's one of the things that isn't back up yet, but we're diligently working on getting that back up. So we'll be out we'll be out of that capability for a little while yet. Hopefully, I don't know, we looking at Thursday maybe, we'll be lucky to get it back. I don't know, Chuck, you have any idea?
I don't think it'll be ready Thursday.
Okay, so a couple weeks then, we're talking. All right. I also want to take a minute to comment and compliment the staff on the excellent presentations today at our breakfast that we had for the community. A lot of great information. I've had a lot of great comments from a number of people as we were leaving. They're very impressed with what the city's doing and the quality of the leadership of our staff, as I think I can speak for the council, as are we. So again, thanks for putting the city's best foot forward and doing a great job on your presentations today. Now that the meeting is open, we'll go to presentations discussion. Item A is the August 12th, 2021 council meeting agenda. So as we go to that, we'll do the call to the order, roll call. Father Greg's going to be here for the invocation. Mr. Benning's got the pledge. Acceptance of the agenda is Mr. Johnson. City manager's report. Mr. Patuchik, is there anything that you want to share with us today?
Well, we're starting the process of getting the fire truck. So Chief Jones will be happy to hear that. And then the transit buses. And just received the year-end sales tax report from Mr. Felix this morning. And we were up 11% year over year. So for the entire year and 9.3% June to June. And of course, June is usually a slow month for us. So very good report and puts us in good stead for next year.
Great. Anything else? No. Okay, and I'm sure we'll hear more. We will hear more. I don't know why I can't speak today. We will hear more on Thursday. Item number 2 is the consent agenda, and we have two sets of minutes, one from July 20 and one from July 26. Is there any additions, corrections, modifications, discussion on any of those items? So, okay. Then we'll move on. The first item is a public hearing item, and it's a new limited liability ownership license. Ms. Adams, you want to brief us on that?
Mayor Mueller, members of council, the application is for a Series 12, which is a restaurant liquor license for Tasty Walk and Asian Market. The agent and owner is Jung Matranga. With all of our public hearing items for liquor licenses, the notice of the public hearing was posted on the facility, and we have received no comments from the public, pro or con. The police department performed their background check of Ms. Matranga as the statute requires and has no objection to this moving forward. Restaurant liquor licenses, unlike your bars and others, are a single-use license. It's attached to this building and this person. That's the only place this license will be. It's not a quota license, and it does require a certain amount of food sales attached to the liquor sales. I believe it's 40% of their receipts must be from food in order to qualify for this type of license. If approved Thursday night, the application will be returned to the state for final action and issuance.
Any questions or discussion on this item? Or I just want to ask briefly. This is Tasty Walk and Asian Market is the one that opened up where the
Peacock
second
was.
location on the Peacock was.
That is correct.
Okay, the old Beef Bear and the old, yada yada yada.
Correct,
How many
correct,
restaurants
yes.
are there? Okay.
Third location.
Bab and Fry.
Yeah. Okay. That's right across from an important part of city property. So that's
Yes.
good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Okay. Anything else on that one? All right. Under new business, we go to possible action on a property tax levy. Ms. Osborne, you want to share anything with us?
Mayor, members of council, we're finally at the last step for the budgeting process. So in accordance with state statute, the city held a public hearing for the property tax levy on July 26, 2021. The proposed primary property tax levy rate is set at .1108 per $100 of assessed value, which will generate an estimated $377,145. The slight increase in total property tax revenue from the previous fiscal years is due to new construction. And as we stated in the last meeting, Arizona Department of Revenue provides the fiscal year 22 property tax levy rate and total collection amount. So due to the decrease in valuation of taxable property, the rate was adjusted slightly higher for fiscal year 22 so that the amount paid by citizens in fiscal year 22 remains the same as the amount paid in 21. So for this proposed new rate, the city is not required for the truth in taxation notices for the property tax levy, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate all your hard work. And this is the last budget vote for this
The last
fiscal
step.
year.
Yes, sir.
Amen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. As we go to item number 5, it's the amendment, this is the chapter 33, city departments and the amendment to the city code. Ms. Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this item's coming back to council for your consideration and final adoption. Just to quickly refresh your memories, this chapter defined a number of specifics about each department, and it's been long since obsolete. So this is an update to generalize the scope of services provided by each department, so hopefully we don't have to come back and update this again in the future. It's been out for public comment as required for 30 days. There's been no comments received for or against, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions, comments? None? Anybody? Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Yarborough. Item number 6 is the possible resolution adoption of Parks Master Plan. I guess we got Mr. McLaughlin's going to pitch for you, huh? Okay.
I'll handle it. So we are pleased to submit our final draft of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan for your approval consideration on Thursday. This checks off your last strategic plan goal of developing a comprehensive Parks Master Plan. We believe that the draft reflects the input that we received from the mayor and the members of council, as well as the public input during the 60-day public comment period. Our memo summarizes the input and the changes that were made to the draft document. Just some brief thoughts on what we read. Balancing water conservation goals with adding new water features will be factored into future decisions on park upgrades. We believe that the splash pad and spray features that are proposed in the plan sufficiently satisfy the public interest in a responsible manner. Building a second public pool or constructing a fishing pond are beyond what we're prepared to recommend at this time. Some implementation concerns were raised regarding Roadrunner Park that will be addressed when we initiate the detailed master planning and engineering that's required for new park construction. We do understand the need to consider site access, parking and circulation, environmental and neighborhood impacts in the eventual park design. There will be a specific public outreach process conducted to determine which features will be added. And right now, we have the popular park features at Tompkins Park as a starting basis, but we'll still need to tailor it to this specific site. Regarding tribute, the build-out horizon for the special area plan stretches far beyond what we're contemplating with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We're still working with Castle and Cook on the final phasing plan for the infrastructure build-out, but we agreed that the first community park will not be needed until at least the 2000th home is constructed, and this benchmark is not likely to be realized during this planning period. We fully concur with the comment that the city consider the special needs and desires of the neurodivergent and the disabled, and there's a lot that Laura could share that we're already doing in that regard. The master plan does help us understand and proactively plan for future maintenance and park needs, ensure that future park upgrades are consistent with community desires. and new parks are logically located and developed to maintain an appropriate level of service. The plan is designed not to only enhance the quality of life and sense of community for existing and future residents, but to leverage sports tourism as a means to grow our economy. The current year budget has given us a jump start on its implementation, in large part due to outside grants that we received or are expected to receive. If approved, it will serve as a guide for our annual capital improvement program budget process and support future grant applications or donor requests. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Questions for Mr. McLaughlin?
I have a
Any
comment.
comments? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I love looking through this Parks Master Plan. It's super exciting. I really love the breakdown and the analysis of all the different parks, the maintenance and all of that stuff. And I feel like it's something that is really, really gonna improve the quality of life and be really great for the citizens of Services. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, we are too.
Yeah, and I just want to point out something here in the write-up. It's not in the plan itself, but I think when we look at in the motion, it says, after background, in the middle of the second paragraph, the plan will act as a guide to develop and maintaining parks and park facilities for the next 12 years. And the key word there is guide. A lot of the times, our constituents will look at, I've been approached several times since I ran on a pro-parks agenda and missed getting elected by 11 votes way back when. And people seem to think that now that we have a Parks Master Plan, everything is cut in stone. But there's a process as we approach each park. For example, the park there in it used to be called Three Canyons. It's now called Canyon. Was it Canyon de Flores? Is that the one?
Yes, sir.
There will be a parks process whereby we will go to the neighbors as well as everybody else, and hopefully do it the way we used to do it in the old days, is find a place, maybe the Methodist Church or wherever, or on site if there's a pavilion there, and we bring the people in a couple meetings and put them in groups and give them a blank piece of paper and say, what do you want with your park? And let them do it, give us that input, and then we go refine that based on this plan and figure out what we can afford to provide the amenities that will be used. And obviously, you mentioned a park that followed that process already, and people are happy with the dog park and the ball courts and all the other open spaces in that place. So it's a system that works. But again, the plan is a guide. The plan is not cut in stone. The other key paragraph is the last one on that same page. Capital improvement recommendation in the master plan cover maintenance, replacement, and proposed upgrades in existing parks and proposed new park development. We need to still be able to figure a way as a council to make recommendations and to fund all those things for upkeep and revitalization of older parks. I can think of Chuck and I have had a couple of discussions about Nancy Hakes Park, which most folks probably don't know where that is. It's a little neighborhood park that has needed some help for a long time, and those kind of things have to be part of this process as well. So I just wanted to point those two things out, and I'll get off my soapbox. Any other points of discussion or comment?
Just for the Veterans Park, I know there's a local veterans group that's trying to do some upgrades to the park itself from a veteran standpoint. They're doing fundraising to put like bricks and stuff like that. How does that fit into the plan? Is that going to be addressed later on to say this is okay to do and this is how it was paid for, things like that, in case people ask?
Thank you, Councilmember Rodriguez. So yes, it was considered in this. We left the front of that park, that's the northern facing to the Fry side in the current veterans area. So that was ratified by resolution by council several years ago. The veterans group is currently working on their fundraising efforts, and this plan will actually be will beautify the surrounding areas of that, but it leaves that alone for that process.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to add that has been set aside appropriately, I think, in the plan. The other thing that was going to be a conflict in the future was that's the same area the veterans want to go in as the area we normally do the Christmas tree lighting and have a big event there. If everything was built the way they have asked for it to be built, then there may be a conflict with doing Christmas right there. Our Parks Director has already started working with the Kiwanis and other groups to have an alternate site in front of, basically in front of the pavilion with a 35-foot tree, et cetera. And that'll be a year by year, add a little this year, add a little next year, and then get to the point where we can have a sustainable Christmas event in the park as we have had in the past without interference, potentially with the building and the establishment of the veterans side of the memorial. So all that kind of thing has been thought through, fortunately. And we need to continue to do that, look ahead. Okay? Any other discussion? All righty. Let's see. Item number 7. Mr. Pregler,
Yes.
talk to us about some changes to the code.
So thank you. I will try to do my best without their monitors. We're going old school here, so I will do what I can. Yeah, so thank you once again, Mayor Mueller and members of council. Staff is recommending 3 separate development code amendments for your consideration. Now, as I've mentioned previously, the Community Development Department regularly reviews code provisions and procedures to identify ways in which the city can improve efficiencies, clarify requirements, and help residents and business owners move through the review process more easily, which is consistent with the City Council strategic plan initiatives. And the proposed text amendments before you will be consistent with these policies. So, the first amendment I want to talk about relates to the definition of building height and finished grade. Now, the current definition of building height reads that the vertical distance of a building measured from the lowest grade adjacent to the building to the highest point of the roof. The proposed definition reads that the vertical distance of the highest point of the roof for a flat roof and the average height between the eave and ridge for gable, hip, and gambrel roofs measured from finished grade. Now, you provided a slide, hopefully, which looks something similar to this, which kind of explains what I'm referring to. So you see that in the depiction on the left, which is the current, basically is how our code reads today. We go from lowest grade to the highest point of the roof is how we determine building height. So, for example, if the building is 35 feet, you would measure that from lowest grade to the top point of the roof. That would be the 35-foot line. Under the new regulations, proposed regulations, we'd look at the highest grade rather than the lowest grade and go to the median point between the eave and the ridge line, which you could see right here. So, for example, if the maximum height of a building is 30 feet, that would be measured from the highest grade to the median between the ridge line and the eave. So the ultimate height of the building could actually be a little bit higher than 35 feet. It could be 2 feet or 3 feet in addition to 35 feet. Again, the reason for this is to provide additional flexibility for commercial and residential buildings as necessary. And then secondarily to this, I talk about revising the definition of finished grade. And the current language says that the final elevation of the ground surface after development is defined as finished grade. The proposed definition is that the final elevation of the ground surface after alteration at the highest point. Again, we're talking about the highest grade of the property after the property has been graded and set for drainage and the building is ready to be constructed on the property. So this is what we're talking about here in terms of the change, going from the highest grade, or from the lowest grade to the highest point of the building, to the highest grade, and then to the median point between the eave and the ridge line. Again, these would be for the sloped roofs. For flat roofs, it'd still be the highest point of the building. So let me kind of stop at this point if you have any questions about that particular code amendment.
Did you get this?
The question would be, like, for safety purposes, for fire department apparatuses, how would that affect the true height of a building versus can the apparatus reach that? Is that going to be something that kept in mind that's passed on? This is the new proposed height of a building, but the true height, if we had to get an apparatus to that building, is that going to be tracked somewhere?
Right. Well, it's my understanding and you can answer this better, Chief, than I can, but the ladder truck can go at least, 4 stories?
Mayor Mueller, members of council, yes, the fire department apparatus, through the process of getting their building permits and all, is part of the process of making sure that the apparatus has the radius to turn around. The height of the building we look for is a time and a half of it, and all the buildings within the city reach that, and with that process.
And I just am a proponent, having looked at stuff as the liaison to P and Z for a few years. Your proposed finished grade, I'm not sure it's clear in the writing. What you show on the picture is not really clear, and I don't have a real suggestion for you. The final elevation of the ground surface from the highest point of the graded lot, maybe. I'm not sure this is in clear English. That's my problem. And obviously, for somebody who deals with code and people that are gonna have to go out and enforce code and build a code, they need to have a very clean,
Understand.
clear English translation. And I'm not sure we got that here. I understand the intent.
It should say the highest grade adjoining the finished structure.
Or maybe the highest adjacent grade.
The final elevation of the ground surface after the finished grade, the final elevation of the ground surface, is it the highest point of the ground surface after grade?
That's right. The highest adjacent grade is what the.
Well, we're looking at the finished grade, okay?
Right.
Finished grade, I think was what you're telling us, is the finished grade is the highest point of the final elevation after alteration.
That's correct.
So I think you got your sentence maybe backwards. Wouldn't you put some words in the front? To me, that's clear. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I can certainly revise the language to be.
Yeah, but I mean, and I'm trying to think of a homeowner like myself who doesn't have much experience that may want to build something or invest in something, and I don't understand. I can't really understand the language, and I'm sure there are probably builders that would come and talk to you about what's that really mean.
Sure.
So as clear as we can make it.
Okay, I
the
will
better.
revise.
That's why I'm asking the question.
I can revise that and get it to you by Thursday.
Okay. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I worry about new development. If I'm already a homeowner, I selected my site for a reason. If a developer can, I don't want to say sneak in, if a developer can get 4 to 5 feet in the house next to me when they develop it, that 4 feet is, I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're talking views and what I see from my house, 4 feet's a big difference. So that part just worries me of what are we going to block doing this on the residential side of the house? How are neighbors and people already in the development going to feel in that aspect? Is the only concern I would have, because like I said 4 feet's a lot of feet.
I'm not sure how we get away with that. We can regulate that effectively, because they could seriously raise the level of the lot, period, in their construction,
That's
and
true.
still build their building to the proper height standards, and this wouldn't prevent it.
True.
So I'm not sure how we can
Stop
again,
that.
we can talk about regulating views.
The dirt.
And I don't know how we regulate views, and again, I'll use my house as an example. Before the 2 houses across the street built, I could see the entire Huachuca Mountains. Can't do that now.
Wish everyone could.
Yeah, I wish everyone could.
Thanks,
You
sir.
know, I didn't buy I could have bought the properties, but I wasn't smart enough or rich enough to do it at that time.
That's where I'm at.
Okay, if there's no more questions regarding that amendment, I'll move on to the next section then. So the next proposed amendment relates to communication facilities. Staff is recommending an amendment that would exempt essential communication facilities for emergency, police, and medical service dispatch located on public property from the development requirements in the communication facility section of the code. Now, one example where an exemption is necessary relates to architectural standards. The development code currently requires all communication towers use stealth design, which includes concealing attached antennas and prohibiting the use of lattice-type towers. Communication towers used for cellular service are only using cell phone antenna arrays, which can easily be concealed in a monopole or a faux pine or a faux palm tree for cellular service only. Emergency service towers do require additional arrays, dishes, and antennas that cannot practically be concealed. Therefore, the lattice-type tower is more functional for emergency service towers. In addition, there are reduced maintenance costs and repair times with lattice towers as opposed to monopoles. For example, monopoles require the city to order a lift truck from Tucson, causing delays in the repair work and ultimately delays to emergency responses. Repairs to lattice towers only require local personnel to climb the structure and make the necessary repairs. Finally, lattice structures are the industry standard for emergency service towers, as can be seen from the Cochise County lattice towers. So this amendment then would expedite the review and construction of emergency communication facilities, which ultimately allow for quicker response times. Any comments with that for that section? Okay. Moving on then, the final amendment being proposed relates to the architectural and design review applicability. The Development Code currently exempts single-family residential and multifamily residential with 4 or less units on a lot from meeting the architectural and design review requirements. Although the architectural and design requirements would be applicable to commercial, industrial, and apartment developments, the code does not specify if these requirements are applicable to sheds or accessory buildings associated with these developments. So to clarify this issue, staff is proposing code amendments which would exempt certain accessory structures from meeting the architectural and design review criteria. Specifically, accessory structures that have a wall or walls that can be viewed from a public right-of-way, 30 linear feet or less, would be exempt from the architectural and design standards. So, for example, if we have a shed placed on a property, let's say it's a corner lot, for example, and the shed can be viewed from a roadway, and there is no screening devices such as landscaping or walls, as long as the width of those walls are less than 30 feet, 30 linear feet, it would not require a architectural design review. Similarly, if there is a shed or an accessory structure which has walls that are greater than 30 linear feet but is screened by buildings, walls, or landscaping, also would be exempt from architectural design standards. It's only those accessory structures which have no screening, can be viewed in public view, and have a wall which is greater than 30 linear feet that would be required to have to meet architectural design standards. Now, staff reviewed all the commercial and industrial sheds issued in the past 6 years, and none had a wall which was greater than 30 linear feet. So the 30 linear feet, we don't see too many sheds applying for building permits. So this issue would come up not very commonly. This would be for those larger, accessory structures or sheds, which would be used for storage or equipment for the principal structure on the property, not for these smaller sheds, which we would typically see in residential areas as well. So, any questions on that section of the code?
Well, you basically, with your last part of your statement, told us we don't really have a problem with this.
That's what, yeah.
So I just want to clarify, we're talking commercial, industrial, and apartment buildings.
Yeah, basically any development that requires a site plan typically kicks it into an architectural design review.
Okay.
And although it's not an issue now, the problem is we need to be able to clarify that accessory structures are not applicable to the architectural design criteria. Right now, all it says is any new commercial development has to meet the requirements of the architectural design standards. And there could be a new shed on a piece of property. And what we're saying is that shed would be exempt from our architectural design standards. It's only certain sheds, 30 linear feet or greater, which then would kick in these standards.
Let me try to see if I can give you a couple examples. Let's say we have an apartment building or a commercial venture. For some reason, they want to put either storage or a place for people to park cars, and they put up a 30 linear foot wall. They put a solar panels across the top. That would then be required. If it's more than 30 feet, it would be required to have the screening and all the other things that are associated with it.
Correct.
Okay. If it was 29 feet, he's cool. So why the 30 feet parameter? Have you looked at the past, what people have asked and figured out what the largest are or the smallest are?
That's correct. Again, looking at the past 6 years, we've noticed that many of these sheds are around 200 square feet, 250 square feet. They don't have, none of the sheds we looked at actually had 30 linear foot wall. So like, as I said, I think 30 feet is a good threshold because we're not going to get too many of those that are going to be 30 feet and above. We do get many that are 200, that would have a 20-foot linear wall, but not about 30 linear feet.
So for instance, the metal connexes, the big long metal storage that we use in the military, that we shipping containers, that people are now using to convert to different buildings and storage, those are definitely 30 feet.
That's correct. In fact, we did permit one probably a couple of months ago for a church, and it is actually 40 feet in width. In that particular case, it was actually screened by the buildings. It couldn't be seen from a public roadway, so we were allowed to permit it.
So it's still possible, but you have to screen it with.
That's correct. If it's screened, then these architectural design standards would not apply.
Okay.
Now I'm beginning to understand when as soon as he said Connex, because I will tell you, when you talk about a structure, I'm thinking some buildings, garages, and those kind of things, an actual cinder block structure. But I would agree that if you have a Connex that's over 30 feet and it isn't properly painted, maintained, roofed so it doesn't leak, etc., that can be an eyesore and cause vermin problems. It can cause other things. So now I appreciate your comments because that makes me understand a little bit better as to why we're putting something else in the code, because I'm not one of those that just likes to see you write code.
I understand. That's why I'm here for.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so the Planning and Zoning Commission heard the amendments on July 3rd and August 3rd, excuse me, and unanimously recommended them to City Council. The city did post the code amendments on the city website. The city has not received any public comments to date. So approval of the resolution will start a 30-day public comment period, which will allow for additional public comment. And this will be brought back to you after 30 days for final adoption. The staff's report.
Okay, any other further questions from Mr. Pregler? Any other discussion? Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you standing up, taking the grilling. Okay, we'll end the meeting with a call to the public, comments of council, and then the adjournment. So we'll now move on to item B, and that's the discussion of a...
Mr. Mayor, I just need to break in real quick. We just got word from Ms. Flassar that there is, FAA is wanting to send us another $32,000, and we need to get that on the agenda for Thursday.
Okay.
So it will be added. Maybe Sharon could brief you very quickly.
Hey.
So that item will show up on your agenda then.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I apologize for this one coming in late, but we just received notice from the FAA this week on the item, and they've requested a response back by August 26th. I believe this is either the second or the third round of funding that the FAA has sent our way. The first acronym was the CARES Act, and I believe it is now ARPA, but this is tied to COVID-19 relief and providing money for airports associated with ongoing impacts related to COVID-19. This particular funding is $32,000, straight federal funding, no required city match on this one. So similar in terms to the others that have been approved by council.
So the action on Thursday will then be to authorize us to accept it.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Okay. The other question that comes up is we just quote unquote had our last budget item for the year. How's that going to be included in the current budget?
Are there spending or time frame restrictions, or can we push that off till next fiscal year?
I would have to double check the timelines on it, but in the past, what Yolanda Velasquez has used this for is for personnel related expenses. They have very specific criteria which have not changed from action to action on what we are allowed to spend this for.
So, Mr. Mayor, based on that, it'll just be an offset to the expenses that we already have.
So we're still going to be under our 115 million plus,
That's correct.
and we won't need any further budget action.
Yeah, we won't be adding any spending.
All right. Those are my questions. Anybody else got anything other than say it's good, we got that?
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, I guess now we'll move on. To B is discussion of economic development advisory group, council, whatever we want to call it. And I like to just kind of start this off before we get the staff involved with a kind of a discussion. It's my very strong feeling that before we add any missions or requirements to government, that we fully understand why we're doing it, what the needs are, and be very aware of what the scope of an additional piece of government is. And from that, I think if we understand that, then we can go ahead and decide whether we need a normal commission, whether we need a advisory council, whether we need anything. But I'd really like to have a discussion as to if we do have a advisory group or a commission, whatever we want to call it. I'd really like to know what the need is and what specifically is the defined mission for this group or this new element of government we're going to make, and I'd like to open it up for discussion. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start, I guess in my mind, I'll start. One of the things we talk about when we talk economic development, and when we talked about it in the past, we bring up stakeholders and we reach out to stakeholders. And I think this gives us an opportunity to have the stakeholders available to us and available all the time with the same concept. I look at the Airport Commission and their what they do and what they wanted to do and what they keep doing, and that's supporting something they believe in. So I believe we bring business owners who have a stake in what happens around them as stakeholders to the table. It gives Tony, who's a team of one right now, and I say team of one, he has the rest of the staff, and they work wonderful together, so don't get me wrong. It gives him that same insight that Parks and Rec has with their commission, that the Airfield Commission brings to the table. It lets us do more work and bring more bodies to the table to accomplish something that we need to accomplish, and that's further building our economy. And that's why I think it's important. And I'm hoping other people chime in with what their thoughts are. But
And I also meant to preface this whole thing by saying I want to apologize to Mr. Rodriguez because you weren't in on the whole build up to this. We've actually had Tony and his team at that time, as it was, come and basically say, well, what are we doing on economic development? What are our standards? And you may not have got that full brief from Tony on economic development, but I would recommend that you get with him and do that. But we've gone through a whole series of discussions about economic development, where we are, what we need to do. We did part of that with our strategic planning process, et cetera. So you may be a little behind, and I apologize for not going through that with you. Anybody else want to make any comments? Greg, this was your initiative.
I know it is my initiative. It was something I ran on in 2018 and something I ran on in 2020 as a write-in. I proposed this. Mayor and I have sat down and chatted about this. I even took the initiative to write an ordinance creating a commission. I've shared it with several of my colleagues here. I can tell you from my experience that I did sit on an Economic Development Commission in Des Plaines, Illinois. We met once a month at dark 30 in the morning because everybody had to go to work. But they were basically business leaders from various different types of businesses, say, for example, a restaurant, a coffee shop. I was in the hotel business for 30 plus years in the community. And we would sit down with a person like Tony saying, okay, what have you done? What calls have you made? Oh, I have a suggestion. Somebody reached out to me. And in other words, it wasn't to oversee what the city was doing or the staff person was doing. It was to complement, as Will was talking about earlier, bringing stakeholders to the table. I mean, they're a very valuable asset. You know, we always think we're the smartest one in the room. We're not. We're not, because there's competing needs in various different types of businesses and different industries. I know we rely a great deal on Fort Huachuca. I know Tony's got a lot of effort and time placed on the airport development, which I think is a good thing. But I think that, you know, I know he's engaging with Mexico. He's doing a lot of good stuff. All I want is bringing stakeholders together once a month, talking things through, just as the Airport Commission does, Parks and Rec do. I don't think they necessarily have to be like Parks and Rec, regulatory.
No, I don't need.
No, I would not look for that, but merely getting interested people involved to push this thing forward and to help Tony out and to, you know, supplement what the city is doing. Because so often we think, you know, I would not want this to be a regulatory commission at all, but I would want it to meet regularly with good stakeholders. We would have to be cautious of empire building. You know, a real estate person, boy, they could do a lot of manipulation as far as suggestions are concerned. But on the other hand, they could do a lot to supplement our efforts within the city. So I've been pushing this. I've shared my thoughts with many of the people here, and I don't know. It's going to be up to the council here as to what they want to do, if they want to do anything. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, on that same note, I want to bring up, I think, and Tony, I think would probably say that, I can't speak for him, but we lost a great asset when Mike Klein went over to take over CCOM, which, God bless him, I wish him well, but we lost a great asset, someone that would do business walks. And I know 2015-16 timeframe, we used to partner with the chamber, if she's still here, we used to partner with the chamber and we would do business walks with them. And you'd have stakeholders that went around and did the same thing. And I think by bringing the same people that Mr. Klein would go out and talk to, by bringing them into one meeting in one room, we eliminate the going around, and we have other business owners who do things with the chamber, for instance, that goes to networking meetings at night, or network at dawn, I can't remember the name. But we gather them, and they go out and do things on their own when the networks that they do, and then they bring that to the table for Mr. Boone. I agree with Mr. Johnson. We don't do nothing regulatory. I don't think they set any policies or help set policies, but I think it's just a help like we have, and like the Airport Commission, someone who, they're vested, the people at there, everyone on the Airport Commission is vested in that commission, invested in the airport. And I think doing the same for economic development brings a whirlwind of talent, knowledge, and ability to the table to help Mr. Boone and to prop him up more than hurt him.
Okay.
I hope that sounds good.
I'll go around, you better be prepared, 'cause I'll go around and ask, other than the two guys on the ends, what you guys think, so.
With the bookends, I guess.
about the
Well, we'll get
choices.
to that in a minute, but I want to make sure that we understand, if we do have a need, what the need is. And if we know what the need is, then we can figure out exactly which of these areas we need to go into. And I'm trying to get a consensus of council, really, as to whether there is a need to assist, and the way I look at this is to assist the staff in making sure that we're hitting all the things that we need to be hitting in the economic development arena, or all the ones that are I shouldn't say everything, but everything was practical to hit and that will fit our community. Because there are some things that we can go after and spend a lot of money after, but we know it from the start we're not going to get it. So why do that? But are we properly focused and that kind of thing? So anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll share some thoughts and comments. I feel like together everybody accomplishes more, and teamwork definitely makes the dream work, for sure. And I think it is something that, the more we have a lot of people with experience and different insight and suggestions and, things that they've experienced or tried, I think it's a really great way to bring all that together and to, maybe take a certain course of action over another one. I think it's definitely beneficial to have people come together and talk, and especially people that are in business and people that feel strongly about it. So I feel like it definitely would be beneficial. I feel like it's not something that's a temporary thing. It's something that, it can be start small, or it can kind of just evolve as needed as well. So I do think that it would be, beneficial if we have people that are interested in getting it going and keeping the momentum going as well.
I think when I think about this, I think of we always try to compare it to other towns and things where things have worked. Obviously, we're definitely a unique city, but I've seen commissions like this. Similarly, Tampa, Florida, you have MacDill Air Force Base there. El Paso, you have Fort Bliss. It's very common to us where we have the fort right here with us. And to me, when I think about this commission, I think about helping small business owners. We always preach that we need to support local. I think this is kind of help us do that. And there's federal funding set aside for small businesses, but I think it's more than a quarter, 27% probably of the federal budget to help small businesses. So I think it would be an avenue for people in the area all it could do is just help them if they've even thought about or they're struggling with their business, how to start. And then you have common, like you said, people that have a common goal just to get together and talk and try to see how we can benefit our community, and not just one part of the community, but the whole city.
I would agree with you that part of the mission that we've already talked about before is we need to grow the local businesses and work with the local business folks. As far as small business development as a thing, there are other agencies that are more adept in town at Cochise College, in the state, et cetera, that are probably better suited to do that, which obviously we could connect the folks that need that type of help with. So I don't think small business development itself, it should be a part of it's something that needs to be considered, but there are other agencies that do that. So I don't think that should be a primary focus of an economic development group that's aligned with the city. But I mean, you're making good points.
No, well, I'm curious to see how, even if we're just trying it, but maybe, so you just said there's other groups doing it, maybe a partnership group? I don't know. I don't know how exactly it would work, but, so I don't have an opinion on it yet. I feel like I'm not
Need more information.
convinced either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, you do want to
Yeah, no,
jump in here?
I guess for me, the question is what problem are we trying to solve? And so that's what I'm trying to listen. I'm just listening at this point and trying to see. I haven't heard yet in the discussion today an actual problem that we need to find a solution to. So that's what I'm looking for. And then that, like with Carolyn, will help me kind of hone in where we want to go from there.
That would help, yeah.
Yeah. So that's really where I'm at.
And does anybody want to take a stab at what the problem is, if there is one?
Mr. Mayor, I don't think there is a problem. I think, what we're looking for is opportunity.
Yes.
I don't see a problem. I think what we can do is if we can help Tony and his efforts and the staff's efforts on growing this city, economic development. I don't think we have to look for a problem. I don't think that there's one there. I just want to make it better. That's what my goal is. I proposed in the draft ordinance I presented to you, Mr. Mayor, a 6-member board, a 6-member commission. I know you're scared of that word commission, but that's what it would be. And, it'd be limited in scope, with 6 people. We would look for, I think, business leaders in the various industries that would be interested in devoting their time to this, because they don't get paid, so I don't think there's a problem, no. I think that's the wrong approach to looking at this.
Well, I think it's important that we don't use right or wrong words, that this is a discussion, that we just try to get some ideas about what's happening, and I'm still, I'm not sure which way to even look at
Well,
taking
let
it
me-
at this
let me-
point.
Let me just step back and kind of give you what I'm hearing. I think what I'm hearing is there's a desire to enhance what we're already doing,
Okay,
okay? And there's obviously a number of ways to do that, and we can talk about that as well. But traditionally, our economic development department team has looked specifically at certain things. Now, I think it's probably time where we expand the scope a little bit, and the way to do that is to get advice, information from noted community leaders in certain areas, and I would say military, education, medical, business, real estate, construction. I mean, we can talk about a number of things, but these kind of have, in my mind, these have to be people that are in the community, active in the community, know the community, are willing to take the time to use their expertise to share ideas and implement projects, et cetera, to work with the city. We would maintain our basic focus, and periodically they would review that focus to make sure that we're not missing something, or there is another opportunity that we're not addressing. So I personally can see some benefit to a group like that. Now, structure is an interesting question, and unless you got something, William, you gotta really talk about. I would like to have Tony come up and go through your chart, Tony, that you've given us in the book.
No,
We
you
can
hit it.
talk
I was
about
just
that.
gonna say, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And Tony, and I give him a
Well,
lot of credit.
The whole
He's the
goal is
same.
develop the community economically.
Yes, sir.
Right? And we need to use all the strengths within the community to be able to do this.
Agree.
And if we can draw on that, from these, seasoned, I won't say experts, but seasoned folks, that may make us stronger. Chuck, did you wanna make a comment? I got a feeling you
Yeah.
wanna jump out of your seat there.
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm just listening to the discussion because that helps us try to figure out, where we can take this from here. There's a lot of different facets to economic development in terms of what that means to us here in the community. And Mr. Klein, performed a function for us in one of those areas that's very important and actually consumes most of the time, and that's to serve as an ombudsman and working on I'm going to use the term retail economic development, not retailers per se, although many of them are retailers, but they're people that need assistance in finding a site or finding a building or getting through the development process, those types of things. And it requires face time and just sitting down and working together. And they spend a lot of time, doing that and helping. And we see some of the fruits of that effort on the west side right now, and working with Matt and his group. So that's one thing. Large attraction things that Tony keeps me apprised of are a little bit different animal. He's working on a project at the airport. We can't say publicly to anybody what these people are interested in, or they will walk. So that's hard for a group to work on a project like that when you have that type of a situation. So that's another facet of economic development. Government contracting, those kind of things, more open, may be a benefit to have a group, there working on those types of things, bringing those dollars to the community. That's something that, we're aware of that goes on, out there as well. And certainly there are opportunities that exist that don't necessarily translate immediately into jobs, but it could be something working with U of A, Cochise College, developing programs that train and develop workforce, those kind of things. Those are all important. We talked this morning at the breakfast about the need for workforce now. We really, if there's an area where we have a problem currently, it's workforce, getting people trained up here locally to be able to take some of these jobs because people are hiring and we're not finding people to fill those positions even here at the city. So those are just a few examples of the various things. So, bringing a group together that can discuss some of those issues, I can see, some benefit to that, and working with them. They're busy people. If we can get them together on a regular basis, that I think is a good thing. But, but we don't necessarily chase after retail. So if somebody wants Red Lobster, for example, that's not and considers that to be economic development. We're not really here to bring in competition to existing people that have already invested into the community. But if somebody has already made that decision to come into the community, then obviously we're here to assist them in terms of getting them located and getting through our processes. So, these are just various examples of the types of things that Tony does. Obviously another part of our economic development strategy, Laura talked about this morning with sports tourism, events, those types of things. And there may be some interest on the part of community members to talk about how some of those things, might work as well. But that's also an example of bringing outside dollars into the community. So it's not always jobs, although obviously we'd like to have more jobs, but there are initiatives that can lead to more jobs if we work them properly. So I don't know if that's helpful in terms of framing that, but I asked Tony to put together a few things in terms of different structures that might get to where you want to go with the strategic plan item.
And I just want to jump in here real quick, Chuck, to add on to what you said. If and when we have an additional group, they need to be of the caliber where they can sit down and say, long-term, here are the educational needs. And I'll just use education as an example. Here are the educational needs to be able to get to where we want to go. Here's what we need to do as a city, as a community, as political leaders to get to that point, so we can use that as a launching pad. But we're talking longer term development, a thought process of how we meet all the needs of the community. I mentioned medical. Obviously, there's a revolution going on in medical. We have issues with doctors retiring and all the other kind of things. So we need to have an idea of how we're going to do that so we can maintain what we have and build upon it. So in each one of those areas that I mentioned, the military, we work with the Huachuca 50. That structure is pretty much there, with maybe a couple exceptions. But those are the type of things that in my mind, the group would help with long-term focus and short-term actions that are going to get us there. So, Tony.
All right, Mr. Mayor. Well, one thing real quick, if I can just take a moment up front, and then we'll talk about the structural issues. So in the course of the 4 years, I was just trying to think of the outreach and the engagement, just to put this in perspective. So, and these are no particular order. I've learned long ago when I put the framework together, people are literal. So for the public, these are just kind of things off the top of my head. So one, when I first walked in the door, we sat through the Sierra Vista Technical Assistance Program, which included 3 small 8A businesses, as well as some additional small. And we worked with Sun Corridor to bring in expertise. And actually, I got a good sense and feel for the small businesses and their requirements here. That program was much maligned, but if you actually go back and look at the numbers, the jobs, and the economic impact was good. And the end state was to engage with those businesses. I also serve on the Arizona at Work Board, which includes Cochise County, Graham, and Greenlee, and the discussion right now goes back to jobs. and that discussion of jobs and no people. And just to give you a for instance, Arizona at Work, talked to Eric last week, saw him this morning. They're tracking over 450 empty, vacant jobs within the greater Sierra Vista area. There's a handful in Benson, Bisbee, and the like. So that was the center focus on that group for Arizona at Work, which includes educators, business owners, and those types of people on that committee, kind of where they go. I mentioned the Economic Development Framework, and for those of you that weren't here, that was the charge from then council to update the Plan for Prosperity. And the solution in that case was to bring in community leaders. That included business owners, that included real estate, that included Canyon Vista and the Medical Center, Fort Huachuca, our educators, and we ran the room for about 16 to 18 people to try to touch base with all of those facets, to include our small business owners, long-term retailers. If I named them, you would know who they are. The restaurants that have been here for 20 years, the retailers that have served and have phenomenal customer service. And that's what drove those 6 objectives after a couple of sessions to try to pull those people together. And to be fair, they were very busy, and we were trying to be very cognizant of their time. I'm also engaged with the Chamber on their small business I don't know what small business committee to discuss and talk about, and they're meeting on roughly on a monthly basis on where they go. And I say this because these things have helped inform kind of my thoughts and kind of how I approach it. Significant long-term work with Cochise College and Dr. Rottweiler and his team. We still see some great promise in the virtual reality, augmented reality. I know he mentioned the Canadian company. We are still in discussions with them, and we see some great potential. So education is a central piece. We've talked and looked at CTE, and where does that go, and how does that play a role in our community from a workforce perspective? So again, between myself and Mike Klein, we try to stay plugged in, as well, kind of as the ombudsman side. I've worked significantly with Dr. Deno and Jason Deno on U of A CAST and where they go from an intelligence perspective, the internet, and the elements of cyber as well as intel. So all of those pieces and parts, not to include my engagement with Fort Huachuca and those folks, kind of plays a role, as well as the engagement on the small and the large businesses. I will also tell you, Mike and I kind of split duties on the ombudsman role. That was clearly in his job description, but I learned a lot walking the talk on our code and our enforcement, as well as engaging. And then probably within the last year, probably at least the last 6 months or so, as the pandemic's waned, I've kind of ended on a question, which is what more can we do to our local business owners? And I know Matt has done the same thing as people have come through community development. So I offer that as points in discussion, at least from our perspective, and I think I tried to cover most of that in that 45-minute brief that I did a few months ago. And for Councilmember Rodriguez, I'd be happy to go through that at your leisure. Now, to the structural solutions, as a planner, having planned most of my entire life, I sat down with Chuck last week and we tried to provide some options. And again, we were still, I'll be honest, at that point, there had not been the discussion about where we're going. And in Army speak, the commander's intent and where do we want to go. So we looked, and Chuck and I came through the conclusion there were 4 potential structural options. As I've learned in the military, there's always option 5, 6, and 7 that nobody thought about. So it's a little of this and a little of that. But if you look through those, the structural solutions involve a task force. And that, by definition, or at least by our definition as I looked, has a time frame and a very direct purpose. Glendale's set aside one for 1 year to bring business owners in, and it was to look at codes, ordinances, and processes to say, hey, can you recommend, should we clean these up, or as Matt used it this morning, simpler, simpler. That was one example as a potential. So if you've got a very specific problem, which I haven't heard in this discussion, but that a task force would give you that option. Clearly, the non-regulatory commission, based on the administrative action, is another option, and the tendency and time to assist and work with that goes forward. I'll offer my own personal. Having looked at all of the segments that make up our community, it might be tough I'm not going to say impossible, to pull 6 individuals to cover all of the bases that we deal with, but we can cross that bridge if we get there. Another one would be kind of a mayoral blue ribbon panel advisory group under the authority of the mayor, which gives both the mayor and the council a great deal of flexibility. How many people? When does it meet? It wouldn't follow necessarily the administrative guidance. So again, just another potential. And then this one I added kind of at the tail end, and Melanie's here, but it was a discussion with her committee. And as they look to shape and change the chamber based on the guidance from the U.S. National Chamber of Commerce, one of the discussion points was a business or a small business council with the intent to discuss and talk about what's going on in the community or what are the issues. And I offered her at that time my partnership to explore where we go. In this case, the partnership must be equal. We must have the same intent, the same goals as we move forward. But as a sounding board, potentially for the local businesses and the opportunity to do what we had the opportunity to do this morning, which is talk in greater detail than perhaps we have the opportunity about what we're doing up here. I will refer you back to what Chuck said. There wouldn't be any NDAs and we wouldn't be discussing things that we can't discuss here. So, I mean, it wouldn't change that environment. But that might offer us something outside of the commission or the non-regulatory guidance that we've got to explore the options of how many people are interested, how many people can invest the time, and when would it work? Would it work at, as Councilmember Johnson said, dark 30, an evening? Or again, how do we go about that process? And could the business owners, would they be interested in that proposition? Now that one is, of the 4, looks at a very lean area or very thin area on the business side. Because that's kind of different. So that's a subset, in my view, of the economic development impact, because that clearly leaves out the education. To a lesser extent, it leaves out workforce. It clearly leaves out the medical, the professionals, and some of those other things in there. So again, we just wanted to provide a menu of options without having the benefit of this discussion, and that's kind of the driving force. I pulled the words from the strategic plan because those are things that you have seen and approved. And that's kind of where we started. So with that, I will, I guess, take questions or guidance from.
Okay, I guess it's up to me to basically say that the way I'm reading this is we need to do something along these lines. Obviously, you're absolutely right. A task force is focused on one thing and goes to one thing. And I think what we're talking is a broader focus. So for me, the task force is probably out. And as much as I like to partner with the chamber is focused on, it's a small business group, and maybe a member or a leader of that group would be part of our other group, but they're going to be focused specifically on small business and that thing.
Nor, Mr. Mayor, excuse me, are we precluded from still working with
Yeah,
them?
we still work.
So-
We still continue to work with the chamber to work with it. Thank you, Chuck. I didn't mean to exclude them. So that to me looks as if we're going to proceed. We have 2 structures, which would be the non-regulatory commission. And to me, if we follow that, there are specific guidelines, number of members, regular meetings, et cetera. And I'm not sure the type of people we want, the higher powered people that understand have been successful can be available. My after reading Greg's proposal, I started thinking about this, and really the main reason I would support having a advisory group of some type is we need to have a outside group that knows our community, that are experts in their field, look at what we're doing and looking for the spots where we're missing things, or we may be missing things, or we could do things internally, locally, within the industry areas that I mentioned, to enhance what we want, where we want to go in the future. And they could help us as a council establish goals on what type of businesses to attract and provide the expertise and do some things internally for education, for labor force, et cetera, that would help us. So in my mind, and we don't have to call it a mayor's advisory group, but an economic advisory group that would meet on a regular basis every quarter, every 2 months, and be industry experts in their particular field, where they can meet with Tony, they can meet with me or other council members based on the subject that's being discussed, the subjects are being discussed. Basically, it would have to be a experienced, almost blue ribbon panel for folks, and they would give us the gut check on, are we going the right direction? Is this really the future that the council has decided that we need to have in the community? And that's the kind of thing I would propose. So we're talking a non-standard commission, essentially, if we do this. Yes, ma'am.
So I was just gonna say, it sounds like you're talking more like, people from different sectors of the community coming
Experts
together.
from different sectors
Yeah.
come together, the same ones, over a period of time, and having specific issues to discuss at the meetings, and getting input and recommendations, and in fact, some cases, a little skin in the game for their staff to help support as well, depending on what they are, what their business or what their area expertise is. So we're not talking a standard commission where the commissioners go and say, we're having a good meeting, here's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it every month, and then they basically walk away and let the staff go to work. Now, it doesn't mean the staff's not gonna have some work here, Tony. But again, that's the kind of thing I think might be worth a try.
I'm definitely not trying to make any more work for Tony. If anything, we help you at all. If you even want to help Tony, we don't even know that part. Nobody even asked you. I'm sorry, but I really appreciate you breaking that down. When I think of this, also, I always think about our partnership with Fort Huachuca, and God forbid we ever go through a BRAC again, where it sounds like I mentioned before. I think that's what keeps them really involved with their local military bases. Here's our commission. Here's the money we're bringing into the community. Here's the jobs that, for instance, I'll just use contracting because I'm more familiar with it. Here's the contracts we won. Here's the jobs we put, not just on the base. We have a lot of people that work off here in the city at the different businesses. And here's how we've built this community. So we've invested all this. This is how far our roots go. So kind of like look somewhere else. Don't even consider Fort Huachuca again, kind of thing. But I also keep that in my mind when I hear about commission is the BRAC, Base Realignment Commission.
This can't be just looking at business outside the post. It's got to be the whole community.
Oh, for sure. And I like the idea of bringing in people from the outside that it's worked. I mean, bring in the Red Lobster guy and say, here's why it will or won't work in Sierra Vista, and that's fine. I think people would be open to that.
Yeah, and the key thing I think for this group too is to identify potentials. And they don't necessarily have to do the pursuit of the potential businesses or whatever, but they can help with background. They can steer staff in the right direction, council in the right direction, and to see if those are valid pathways to improving the community. Because we're good, I pity sometimes poor Tony and Mike, because you run a lot of pathways and you do a lot of work, and you end up in a box canyon, and there's no way to go. But that's what you do when you try to run down potential opportunities, and it's a lot of work, and it can be very frustrating. I know. So you got to have a group that's willing to work on different things simultaneously. And I think we can get advice from these folks. I think we get key ways to approach future development, and it includes the post, but it's not just the post. We need to look for what's going on the post, what's complementary to the post, and what we can do here that's not going to have any major effects on the environment. And those are three big challenges right there. Greg?
Not only that, but when I was in Des Plaines, I felt like I was an ambassador on behalf of fellow business persons and as well as the city. And I think that that's where our opportunities are, is that we can help Tony, we can, an advisory group would supplement, not replace, but supplement your efforts. And, now that you don't have Mike to rely on, I think that this is the time we may have to make a decision as to where we're going to go with this. If we don't want to call it a commission, let's call it an advisory group. I'm not wedded to that. I just spoke from my experience back in Des Plaines, Illinois, when I sat on the Economic Development Commission for many, many years there. So I think the ambassador part is a big thing. I think the supplement is a big thing. And that's all I have to say. This has been my baby, and I hope we can come to some consensus today. So,
All right, well, we'll go with Mayor Pro Tem and then we'll.
You ready?
Yes, ma'am.
So, and I hear everything that's being said, and again, I was just jotting down my thoughts as everyone was talking. So I keep hearing ambassador, advocate, all of the things that I think are very important and that we should be doing, and I think that actually council should be doing. But I just started listing all the groups in the community that work on economic development of some sort, job force, and I am not saying we don't need to have a group. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to figure out what this is going to look like. So I have the Huachuca 50, Chamber of Commerce, IDA, EDF, our Economic Development Department, Small Business Development Center, SEGO, Arizona at Work, and us as a council member. And I'm still struggling with the question of, in addition to what these groups already do, what would this group do? Or would it be these people coming together to talk?
Some of those people I would think would be in the
these other
discussion,
ones
but it's
done.
really to focus the city's economic effort, the official council-approved city economic effort.
So it could look like some of those people
And
coming in.
I would assume there would be leaders from the Post, at least 8 leaders
A
from the
leader.
Post, a leader from education, a leader from the medical community, a leader from small business or retail, a leader from construction slash housing. I mean, we could do various parts, and those folks would have to be selected based on their experience and their willingness to sit down and have frank discussions on where we need to go for the future. And the council's going to have to agree on basically agree that the recommendations they give is a way to go. And there may be some disagreement there where the council says, well, that's not really our priority right now. We think this is a better priority, et cetera. And so again, a lot of discussion, a lot of give and take, but I think there's expertise in our community that's already here that I think we can take advantage of, that we may not be taking as an effective advantage of as we are now.
Okay, and can I follow up before you move on?
Yeah.
So that sounds great, and I actually wrote a list of different sectors in the community that could come together to talk about this. So today, are we just getting a consensus of kind of what direction we want to go
exactly.
in?
That's exactly why we had listed the structural solutions, because really, what we want to do is talk about this. If this is acceptable, then we would have to actually come up with a resolution of some type that has the appropriate structure.
It would be very outlined.
And would outline explicitly, and then we would have a second discussion to make sure everybody is comfortable with that structure. At the same time, I would be open to hearing as to who in the different sectors you think may be appropriate to serve on this. And we could have some, a little, obviously that's not gonna be it's gonna be a one-on-one discussion because there's personnel involved.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think I should be the one to approach, unless there's somebody who's a personal friend of somebody else, maybe we'll approach them together. If we are people that we want to approach or have an idea that would work well on this committee, to go convince them, yes, you need to invest some time. Because all the people that we were looking at are very busy people.
Yeah.
and have to be willing to lend us their expertise and potentially some of their, not only their time, but maybe their businesses or the educational institutions or whatever may want to kick in a little bit to get a little more involved with economic development based on whatever the issue is.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. What else?
No, that's it. I'm good. I'm good. If I have any more questions, I'll ask.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem brought up a good thing with all the other organizations doing their part, and I think we partner with them good. But I also think in the description, their part, they have a certain role that they do, and that's why they formed. That role may or may not be to enhance our city, but to enhance whatever they're doing in that role. I think I don't want to say we're bringing this and making it. I always mess up this term, cyclical, because we're not. We're not helping SDF do 180 and go back and look. What we're doing is starting an advisory group, so Tony can do the things that we were talking about. Do the non-disclosure ones. Go out and focus on that one client that's coming here. But we also have a business owner or an invested community member. I don't have to be a business owner that knows the city. So if Judy, for instance, because she's in the back, if Judy brings someone in here to write an article to view the city, we have someone we can go to that's on that commission that knows the points that we're talking about on a monthly basis or whatever it may be, to be that ambassador. But I'm not looking for an ambassador. I'm looking for, like you said, Mr. Bailey, long-term, I'm successful, here's how I did it, let me help you, let me come together and help each other. So
And here's how the real question is, how do we make our community better?
Exactly.
And how do we enhance the economy? That's really the questions. And those are big questions, and there's lots of facets to them. And you're absolutely right. The small business group in the chamber should continue to focus on enhancing small business. If there are things that this group can help them with, obviously, we're going to work together. And it goes the same with education. The Post and Huachuca 50, it's, side by, in my mind, it's kind of side by side.
I agree.
So, all right, so I think the path forward is we had our first discussion, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong. I think we're ready to come up with some verbiage on exactly what we want to do to make this a advisory group, economic advisory group, and how that works governmentally and all that other stuff. And once we get that done, I want you to think about your contacts in the community and the sectors that are in the community, the sectors where you think we need to grow economically specifically, and who those gurus in those areas are in our community, because we do have a few gurus, and talk to me, and we can come up with once we pass this, we'll start asking people to contribute, and I can either go out by myself or with one of you or the city manager or even Tony, and talk to these folks and get them on the advisory group. Okay. So step one is we know what the mission is. We know kind of how we're going to do it. We got to get it formalized. That's going to be the next challenge. And Chuck, we want that next week, right?
Mr.
Mayor?
So
We'll take a stab at drafting.
we'll take a stab at draft, and then we'll have another work session. Hopefully, the next Tuesday, we'll sit down and have a brief work session on that.
Yeah, did you share the draft ordinance that I shared with you?
I didn't share the markup that I'd made with everybody.
Oh, okay. Well, feel free. I mean, it's,
Yeah, but I mean, there were a number of things in there that didn't fit the standard format.
okay.
So,
Well, I'm sure there was, but at least it was a draft.
I'll share that with the staff so they at least have a starting point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Where are we here? Okay. Council, we got time for the council executive report. Mr. Petition, you want to kick that off, and then we'll ask for questions.
Thanks for your support. Okay, Mr. Mayor, we're talking the May-June 2021 report, and Some of the key things in there, obviously the purchase of the Roadrunner Park property from the Sierra Vista Unified School District was approved, and that was $366,000 as put in your budget. So we're excited to get that underway. You've heard about our lightning strike and some of the things that we're dealing with there and getting things up and running. Hopefully, insurance will cover most of the costs associated with that, and Ms. Adams is working that. We're kicking off a number of different projects right now. Of course, Fry North Garden being the main one that's going on right now, but we're also working hard on our bridge project to connect Avenida Escuela together with Domingo Pius project, and of course the ACO project is moving forward as well. We're also working with Schneider Electric on a second Schneider project. That's not here in the verbiage, but hopefully we can work together to find yet another way to take advantage of their expertise. And of course, that would be for following year's budget. So overall, things are looking very good in terms of our revenue and our budget right now. And certainly we're very busy with a number of different projects we have. So staff is here and can answer any of your questions with regards to the departmental components of the report.
Okay, who's on first? Questions?
I had one.
Okay.
Chief Jones, I see our year-to-date total incidence is up dramatically. What do you attribute that to?
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Johnson, I think part of it is people are coming out of COVID and getting out and about a little bit more, and just I think that's the main reason. Okay. Yeah, other than that, no significant incidents that would lead to be why we were having more calls.
Because it seems, it's a blip of almost a little more than 700 incidents over last year. But, since everybody was locked down all last year, that would attribute to. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, go with.
I just had a
Go
comment.
ahead,
I always love to see these executive reports and the breakdown of the different departments and stuff. So I love seeing this and everything. So thanks for putting it together.
Ma'am?
You ready?
Yes, ma'am. I'm always ready.
Yes, you are. You're always on it. Chief Thrasher, I just have a few questions. On your update on the sworn officer staffing update, and you talk about, we have so many positions funded, but we only have this many that can actually be, and I think it's 53 that are available to assign to duty. Have more conversations been had about some services as just not being able to do some calls or any solutions?
We have not since, originally 4 or 5 years ago when I first took over on that. Right at this point, they're still able to handle those calls for service. Patrol is the main portion of the department that needs to be make sure that we have enough staffing on. We still have that basically in our hip pocket. If we need to get to that point on certain calls for service that we wouldn't necessarily respond, I can re-forward that out to the city manager if we need to. But at this point, we're able to deal with that situation. My main concern really is more on some of the more violent type things that are happening where we need major crimes detectives and to deal with those situations. The more recent ones, it takes the entire Special Operations Bureau plus the command staff out on those investigations to make sure those are handled. So that's my main concern at that. And we have to leverage our partnerships with Homeland Security and DEA and CCSO to make those happen. But at this point, we're still okay on responding to those calls for service. If we get down to, I would say, probably less than 30 officers assigned to patrol, then we would be in a more critical stage where we would have to start cutting back those type of things. But at this point, we're able to handle it.
Okay, and that leads me to a follow-up question. So you talked about like community response and all of those things and it looks like we're short in a lot of those areas. So as we recruit new officers in that I assume start as patrol officers, will you then just recruit up, or how do you?
So once we have those officers are trained and available for assignment, then we run through the testing process to fill those other positions.
Okay.
So as an example, we have one sergeant position opening right now. We have already run through that process. As soon as we get somebody off of field training, that position will be filled. And as soon as guys get off training, as long as we haven't lost anybody else, then those positions, the more experienced officers test for those other positions. It's for assignment to detective, which is typically a 6-year assignment, and so forth. So those positions get filled as we see fit. Then we have to, each time that happens, the command staff gets together with the sergeants and figure out which one's the most critical to fill first, and then move down the line.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Chief, I want to thank you for that chart. It gives us a current status. From a management aspect, though, I would hope if it takes 6 months to recruit, and I don't know, what's it take to recruit and put a guy or a guy or a gal in uniform on the street? What's it take?
Year to year and a half.
Year and a half. So, a chart for management purposes, in my mind, would be a very similar chart, but you also project your losses for a year and a half out, and that should give you a damn good indication of how hard we need to be out there beating the bushes, and how hard we need to be working with Cochise College for the police academy. And I would highly suggest that you take you don't need to necessarily share that chart with us, because it's going to be scary.
It's been done, sir. We already have it.
But bottom line is, that's your motivation for your recruiting officers. And if you need to travel, again, to military installations when they're available for job fairs, we need to spend the money to get you on the road.
Yes, sir.
And get those jobs filled.
Yes, sir. We have that chart. We already know what our projections are for our retirements, and then we always project at least 3 other personnel leaving during the year, because that's our average.
Oh, you're never gonna know who's gonna drop at the last minute. That's right.
Absolutely. So, and then we also have to account for, and we always plan for, at least 1 to 2 people on light duty status for that very same reason as well.
Absolutely. That's why the city manager wisely gave you those extra couple of slots to make sure that we take care of those people that are sick.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's good news, though, that you have 5 recruits this time in the academy.
We do. We
That's a
just had
huge
last
increase.
week. Last week we just had 4 pass oral board. We had 2 pass this morning on our PT test. So if law of averages, hopefully 3 out of that group will get through the process, and we're still continuing on. I'll just say that the recruiter is feeling the pressure. Let's put it that way.
Well, the key is you got to jam that pipeline.
Absolutely.
And then you get to where we need to be, and we can appreciate, I think, as council, that how do I say this, public opinion right now has not been nationally, at least I think the police are supported here, and they know they're supported here, but nationally, the police aren't being as supported as they need to be for the great job that they do. So I know that's a problem in recruiting.
It is a problem. One of the things I have noted, though, is that the quality of the candidates that are coming in are a little bit better on average than what we have in the past as a percentage of the total applicants. So, but we are seeing a little bit of an increase in the recruiting side at the moment. But it's cyclical in terms of how it works. So,
but again, that's why you got to keep that pipeline packed.
Absolutely. And we did, as you saw there, we did take the one recruiting trip to Fort Bliss, which seemed fruitful, and we're going to continue that in the process. And the city manager has obviously given us the green light on the funding for those trips, and to really work with getting testing running at those places as well.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. Anything else? on the executive report?
I didn't have any other questions written down.
Oh, there was the write-up in the bottom about Nacho Venezuela, and then Greg had mentioned to me yesterday, because I didn't read the paper on Friday, he passed away.
Passed, yeah.
And his service is tomorrow.
Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, St. Andrew's Church.
Okay.
Okay.
I unfortunately can't make it, but Greg will be there.
Yeah, I can't make it either, unfortunately.
Mr. Mayor, one other thing as well, just want to recognize Paul Semino's service to the community over 40 years, and his retirement will be at the end of the month. And I don't know, and I know he doesn't want anything. Maybe something will happen anyway, but nonetheless, he is our current longest serving employee and has done a great job as fire marshal for us.
Indeed he has.
Oh, and Laura's wreck and roll, well, not Laura's wreck and roll, her department's wreck and roll at Soldier Creek was really great. It was a huge turnout. Do you know how many people? I don't know, did it say how many people? It was a lot more than the first time, the first go around pre-COVID. And that was great because just seeing all the people come out and interact, and the staff was having a good time, or at least they looked like they were having a good time. They did. And they were volunteers in the dunk tank, and I think
So did dunk you?
they deserve kudos. For I did not do that this time.
Me and Angelica got
At the
dunked.
newbies, yeah.
It was a good time.
I think that was cool of them.
The kids love dunking us. It was fun.
I could see that.
I also appreciate the reports that you guys did. I know there's a first responder hiring event coming up. Is that hosted by the county?
Yes, it is. Yeah, there's supposed to be one hosted, but we're part of that.
Okay. So that helps. And obviously, I think as a whole, it always comes back to our duty too, as the city, is to making sure these guys are paid right and getting them on level playing field so they stay in our beautiful city and not leave and go to Tucson or Phoenix, chasing better wages.
Lower quality.
Also, National Night Out's coming up. So other departments have about a few months to work out to do the pool, right? So get you guys in the gym or anybody wants to put together a team, because the next meeting is August 25th for National Night Out next door. So if anybody's involved in that or wants to get involved in that, that's the next meeting.
Okay, so we've already moved to future meetings. So you guys are a step ahead of me today, which is good. Recent trips, I'm not sure, has anybody been on any recent trips? I don't think we've traveled much. We do have a couple of future meetings. We have the Upper San Pedro Partnership tomorrow. I think it's either, my desk calendar here shows it's both at 9 and 9:30. And we're going to be doing it electronically because there's a one group who has basically said their participants have to get permission from their national level to come to the meeting. So we're going to do it over the computer, even though the rest of us are all capable of being there. So those members of the Upper San Pedro Partnership representing the city need to be there as well. I'll remind everybody that Thursday before the council meeting is the group and potentially individual photos. So look spiffy when you show up. Council meeting, of course, is at 5. Home and Business Expo is on Saturday at 10, starting at 10 at the mall. Tip a Cop, Monday. It's from noon till lunch through dinner at Vinnie's.
5 p.m., sir.
Okay, it's okay. 5 p.m. at Vinnie's, and it's for the police department who helps. What's the organization, Chief?
The Special Olympics of Arizona.
Special Olympics, and they've done that for years. And the good folks at Vinnie's allow them to collect all the tips. So go have a great meal and be generous. Future meetings. Obviously, we're going to do this work session discussion in 2 weeks on what we've just talked about, and we've got Thursday night's meetings. What else we got for future meetings? Everybody's scheduled to go to everybody that's going to the conference for the league is scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
What else we got?
I just actually forgot to say at the trips is that I did go, and Judy was there as well, the Rural Policy Summit last week, and I actually have quite a few notes for Matt and Tony and questions for them and some ideas that came out of that meeting, and I'll do a write-up to share with council, but I did attend that. It was very good. Saw Harita.
Good. Nice little place to visit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then we go on to future discussion items, and I know obviously we talked about economic development as one. Have we got anything else, Assistant City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, just the 2 strategic plan items. You have both the final report from the last plan and the implementation plan for the new one. Other than that, we're looking pretty light at the moment for council agenda items for the next meeting.
Yeah, right now, we have no agenda items for the next meeting, so.
But we will have a work session to talk about what you just mentioned at a minimum.
They'll probably be ready for September, Mayor.
Ah, okay. They're telling me I need a week off.
Well, that's my birthday week, so.
Well, then we can celebrate your birthday.
We can do that too.
We'll make it an official city holiday that day.
That's a good idea.
For the council only.
Yeah, I won't know for sure until staff meeting next
Okay.
week, but.
Anything else, discussion before the council? Seeing nothing. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff, for doing a great job, as usual.